So Bruce, thank you for doing this. I'd like us to share a few ideas, almost like in a commentary to different streams of thought that we are influenced by. I mean, one of them for me is the Course in Miracles, or we can say that is a modern dualistic ancient wisdom, but expressed in a modern language, a more modern language than ancient Vedanta and stuff like that. So I think my intention setting this conversation up is not to end up judging the person who pushed this button, so to speak. So it's not about finding a projection that I'm uncomfortable with and project it back at her. It's not about that. It's also not about, what is the word the Course is using? But attack. It's not about attacking her back, even though I might feel a bit attacked by this WhatsApp. Now, what were your ideas about the copy and pasting it? Did you want to bring it up as part of the screen, or so we just talk through it?
So the idea was just to have it on the side so we could reference it. And it's easier to look at than going to WhatsApp the whole time. And
cool.
But otherwise I can go back to full screen and we can just talk about what's coming up for you around this.
Okay. I think to start off as an intro, and maybe you have some comments as I go along, and please stop me, it doesn't matter, is that first, there's a whole lot of stuff that I would absolutely agree with. Like I think some of the opening lines, opening doors is not a thinking process. I understand that. I relate to that. It's not about a left brain process. It's not about a logical, sequential kind of approach, a formula. You do this, and then you do that, and then you do that, and voila, the door's open. It's not. And before I go ahead, maybe for those who might look at it again, even though this is recorded only for us, the context of this is the words of Joseph Campbell that said, if you follow your bliss, doors will open for you. So that's the context. So I don't know if you want to comment so far, but just the initial comment from this person saying, opening doors is not a thinking process. And I think we would agree with that.
Yeah. I would agree. And look, I think it really depends on what kind of doors you're trying to open. You know, if you were a skilled professional with very good mental knowledge, like a doctor or an engineer, and you wanted doors to open for you for work opportunities, then you could go and you could sell your skill and sell your professionalism. And even though you might be contracted or forceful or demanding, or, you know, you may not be heart-centered, you could have very valuable skills to offer that could open doors for you. So one perspective is, yes, the mind is very powerful, and there's good reason why in the Western world, mind training through education is so prioritized, because it gives the ability to control and manipulate resources or physical phenomena. But I think what we're talking about is, how do we integrate well-being and happiness with being successful in life or doing well in life? And my feeling is, as humans, we are emotional human beings, and our emotions are either stopped, closed, like when there's fear and there's anger or there's disconnection, or there's open, you know, which is love and connectivity. And we also feel each other. We instinctively, before our mind recognizes it, our body has felt the people around us. And so we can feel if somebody is transmitting fear or anger or doubt or insecurity. And something inside says, this is not safe, let me back away from it. But likewise, you can feel if someone is transmitting love, connectivity, groundedness, wholeness. And you can feel, actually, I can feel expansive around this person, and I can feel connected to myself with them. And perhaps there's something, I feel good, and if I follow my bliss, I can follow the fact I feel good around this human being. And there might be something there, to explore, to discover.
Okay. Okay, and I would agree with you. And I think that in the world of construct, the world of ego, there is a whole lot of people that operate motivated by fear. They're afraid of something. A simple example is, I haven't studied for the exam. I better get my ass going, otherwise I'm going to fail. So I'm fearful that I would fail. That motivates me. I get my ass in gear, I start studying, and the result is I pass. So voila, fear works as a motivator. So equally, the doctor that feels a calling to become a medical practitioner has to go through a whole rigorous course of hurdles before he can reach that point where he can be called a qualified doctor. But equally, another doctor could approach that with absolute love and fascination and mesmerized by the human body and enjoying every moment by it, doing it out of love and not out of fear motivation. So both of them could, in our dualistic construct of the ego, can reach a certain result. And that's great.
Yeah.
And so I think we have an understanding of the dualistic nature in which we operate. But I think what we're also grasping at the moment as a transcendent position is, how does life look like when we transcend the dualistic nature, the right and wrong, the fear and kind of motivational levels? What's life look like beyond that? And I think that's where we are in our experience curve.
Yeah.
Can I introduce the next line, because it's all related? Then the statement is, the door opens with a key, the frequency of your energy. So the key suggested is the frequency of your energy. So shall we say it is the frequency of the radio station, like Abraham Hicks would say. You can't tune in to your blissful nature and your successful nature if you're not tuned into the frequency of who you truly are as an abundant human being.
That's true.
And I think we are in alignment with that, aren't we? I mean,
yeah. And I think some more context is useful. And you and I in our developments are looking to find a way that it's not simply bound to the egoic identity, which in the simplest terms moves away from what it doesn't like and tries to move towards what it does like, but feels fundamentally like a separate or isolated or distinct being or human in the context of this vast universe in which it has to operate inside.
Yeah.
And it's always trying to find safety and happiness, or avoid threats and find reward, and find a home for itself in the perceived conditions in which it can be in control. And at some point that motivation starts to, for whatever reason, become frustrated. And the consequence of being caught in that motivation is suffering. And there's a desire to return to the heart. Now, so that gives rise to, is there a deeper way that can start to emerge? And what is the quality of that deeper way? And this is where the discussion about energy arises. And another word for energy can simply be emotion or feeling.
Feeling.
Yeah, feeling. What are you feeling? And is the feeling capacitating a quality of openness and trust and confidence in life that can engage? Or is it capacitating a sense of withdrawal? And I need to be in another time or another place in order to feel my happiness. And so it feels like the writer of these words, you know, the door opens with a key, the frequency of your energy. The invitation is to say, can you recognize your energetic state? And can you recognize that your first commitment is to find a way to access your wholeness in the current moment and not in another time or another place? And when you can start to do that, then your life can start to open up again, and you can start to feel a sense of movement and a sense of flow.
Yes. And exactly. And I think the next line is still on course with that. And it says, it's your pure authenticity at source, related directly to your entitlement. But then it jumps to karma, which I just want to discern a bit, to keep away from. I think that, yes, we are the purest self, or the most authentic self, when we are tuned into source, to our divine nature, where there is no lack, where there is no shortcoming, where there's no fear that kind of lame you or distract you from who you are. So authenticity in the sense that you live your pure energy, your pure vibrance comes through in words, in deeds, in connection. So when you say no, there's a reverberation in the room. People recognize that as the authentic self that has spoken. And if you say yes, you also cause an energy stir and a recognition for your truth that comes through into the room. So I think so far we are in alignment with the thinking process.
Yeah. And I want to add that other words for authenticity could be true self, or natural self, or permanent self, or indestructible self, or being, or presence. You know, these are all indicators of this deep quality of incorruptible truth and wholeness that we have inside us, that forms the fundamental fabric of our essence. And that source, that's, according to the thinking we were aligned with, that's plugged into a universal consciousness of which it is deeply a part of and integrated with. And that recognition shifts one from aloneness into unity, into connectivity. So it's helpful to understand that, you know, getting a sense and a feel for what the authentic self feels like, independent of the environmental or relational conditions you might find yourself in, is a really important step. And one of the qualities of that true self is an innate sense of happiness and well-being and joyousness and abundance, not in the sense of accumulation, but a sense of unlimited energetic flow that doesn't trap the self sense, the separate self sense.
Yeah. So in short, if we are connected to our authentic source self, life is blissful, life flows, life supports us, life says yes, life carries us, and there is no sense of worry or fear where life support is going to come. Then the speaker jumps to karma and indicates that karma is what you put in, you get. And even though I agree with that, I just want to come back to the epilogue to this conversation, and that is, I think in ancient Sanskrit we talk about papa karma and punya karma, so bad karma and good karma. So in the context of our conversation so far, bad karma would be if I'm disconnected from self and I do people pleasing and I'm too secretive and I don't live an open-minded life, but I live a pretentious life. I want to come across as looking so good and so spiritual and whatever. So that would be, that will render certain results that seems like I'm not that connected because I'm not living my authentic self. And good karma in this context would be to live my true self, to be my authentic self, to live and express the love that Spirit and Creator wants to flow through me into the world as my gift. So in that sense, yes, I agree with karma. Where I'm a bit holding back is karma is often used to judge.
Yeah.
And in the Course in Miracles, there's no room for judgment. Judgment is part of the Maya dream, the imagined separative dream from Source.
Yeah, Leon, I think when we start talking good karma, bad karma, it plugs very quickly into the egoic structure, which wants to define what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, like what should be happening, what shouldn't be happening, and how can you act and behave in a way to ensure only good things happen to you. But if you look at the story of Christ on the cross, there was a man who was, by all accounts, deeply enlightened, profoundly gifted with healing capacities and abilities, really connected to truth and to power and the capacity to be authentic in the face of an unloving system. And how bad did his life get? Eventually being whipped and beaten and carrying a terrible cross and having to fall and someone else to help him carry the cross and then nailed and strung up. So from the perspective of karma, if somebody is watching this and said, look, there's this spiritual man, I mean, does your life get any worse than that?
Yeah.
And he did not, something inside him, I imagine, kept responding with wholeness, like saying, yes, do not resist this, go with this and trust it. Even though he wanted the cup to be taken away from him, still, he kept on opening, doing the next thing, and taking the next step until it killed him. So there was a profound sense of failure at the end of life going as bad as it can get. But the consequence of that was rebirth, So I think it's, one can act and behave in a way which doesn't generate karma. Like, I don't think Christ was generating karma through going with the negative, with the flow at the time. And if we simply keep opening to the next moment, even if it's profoundly difficult, and saying yes to it without judgment, and meeting it with love, and then find, okay, what is the next step that is true for me? Then it may be you've got to walk through very difficult times, but that's not necessarily an indication of you're doing something wrong or you're disconnected from your authentic self. So I think one has to be very careful of judging these things.
Yeah. And I think what is superficially not seen, or shall I say, what is obviously not clear, is the purpose of Christ entering into the egoic structure, into the world of karma, the bad and good karma world, is to come to show us and demonstrate and role model how it can be transcended. I mean, that was obviously why he entered into this expedition, this experience. And eventually he succeeded by showing us how it can be done. And I think that's something we can unpack in a different conversation, is to say what exactly is the ingredients of transcending karma and getting to the new level of experience in life. So that would be an interesting discussion as well. But for now, I think, to just keep this conversation on track, the next thing which then shocked me in my observational levels, maybe because I've been studying Course in Miracles for 2 years, is then the example in her experience of a man, a person, a friend who's been studying the Course for 17 years, and that's her interpretation, doing the workbook meticulously on a day-to-day basis, studying the Course, but experiencing that his life is consistently deteriorating. In other words, he doesn't have the means to live. So that then gets thrown in, almost like a judgment to say, yeah, you also studying the Course in Miracles, and no wonder you're suffering with your doors not opening for you. So using that. So that for me was quite a shock, and I'd like to unpack that a little bit. I don't know if you have preliminary thoughts about that.
Leon, we can't judge, and if there's a deep pull and a deep interest in a field of study or like a Course in Miracles, and there's one is experiencing a sense of integrity and wholeness through the engagement of that has the capacity to give someone tremendous strength and wholeness in order to navigate the ordeals that might be arising. And one has to ask, are these ordeals only external, or are they also manifesting as some kind of internal chaos inside the ego mind system? So my feeling is that a deep commitment to a spiritual practice, even if it does take you into your life into difficulty, if it's giving you strength, then it has tremendous value. And one needs to be honest. Is one being dogmatic or closed-minded in the way that one is holding on to the Course in Miracles, or is this really like, okay, this is how I'm taking the next step, and this keeps me feeling whole and feeling free, and gives me hope and confidence to move into life. What are your preliminary thoughts on that?
So just in summary, absolute summary form, for me, it's not my experience at all. Since I started the Course in Miracles, it feels to me as if I've reached the pinnacle, the top of the triangle or the top of the mountain of the stuff that I've studied before, because it brings everything for me to kind of a summary experience where the meta levels of the studies of ancient Vedanta and all the philosophical traditions brings it to a point where there's clarity, where there's a very clear understanding of what, for example, it doesn't talk about a whole range of emotional experiences and feelings. It just talks about fear or love. So it makes things very simple. Now, from that perspective, it just did me well, but maybe I had a different approach than this gentleman that had. What is kind of sore and is the fact that she then takes her limiting experience, because she never experienced it, never studied the Course in Miracles, and then projects her limiting experiences on us as if that is causal to what my financial situation is at the moment. That makes it a little bit difficult, coming from a friend that knows me for about 20 years. And then the last thing is where she says, which is very interesting, for her, there's only one measurement. So she kind of disregards CIM because it's not working for this gentleman. And there's only one measurement, and that's your results. Your results are your rewards. By your results, can you measure the value of your investment? So if you, implying that investing all this time in A Course in Miracles not having any results means that you're investing in the wrong thing. And for me, that is a kernel to unpack, because I think that there's an underlying assumption there that sounds to me like the orientation or the perspective from where I look at life is completely trapped in the egoic construct of good and bad. It has nothing to do with a transcendent, non-dual perspective of love.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot in there, and from what I understand is the word results perhaps need to be understood, and as you said, the course is simple. It's about the shift from fear, and fear being the backbone of the egoic operating system, into love, which is the heart center, which is the underpinning of the authentic self operating system. And if there are increasing states of love, wholeness, well-being that are sustaining themselves independent of the outer situation, then you could say, yes, the course is working, because I'm feeling more love, I'm feeling more connection, I'm feeling more happiness. And the fact that my outer results aren't reflecting that yet, does that pull me into fear or contraction? Or can I just meet that with love and open-heartedness?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, so
I don't think that the course or any Vedanta or any non-dual tradition or any spiritual tradition ever had the intention to use the level of your bank account as a measurement of how successful you are with your spirituality. I don't think so.
Yeah.
On the other hand, where I am soft is that I do believe that my Father and I are one. And my Father is the abundant creator of the universe where there is no lack. That I agree with. And therefore, am I studying the wrong course? I think the Course in Miracles is very, very clear. There are hundreds of different perspectives on how to reach God. They don't judge any of those. So even my friend's unique approach to spirituality is not judged by the Course in Miracles. It is encouraged. Whatever works for an individual to ultimately become one with God, that is the perfect route to go. So Buddhism, Christianity, whatever way you choose, that vibrates with your specific energy, that is good.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was ever intended to be a measure of success, that money or bank accounting or the way that you live life was ever a measurement to see how successful you are with your spiritual investments. Maybe I'm missing something, but that's my...
Yeah, Leon, I don't think it is. And, we started the conversation about Joseph Campbell and Follow Your Bliss. Joseph Campbell's also well known for the hero's journey. And an important part of the hero's journey, which is the spiritual journey, is he sets off into the unknown to overcome a great fear. And he faces tremendous ordeals, and often the hero doesn't make it, the ordeal is too severe.
Yeah. He gets defeated.
Or sometimes even dies in some of the stories. So Follow Your Bliss almost implies, do you have the capacity to keep your heart open through the darkness and keep on trying? And so I think where I was coming to with the Course in Miracles is the Course really understands it's pointing to a transformation of your deepest, innermost sense of self. And it almost, the self that's very hooked onto how the outer form needs to be and its successful forms and shapes, that self has to go through a death.
Mm.
And depending on the level of your conditioning or your wounding or the contractions, and also based on pretty up-to-date developmental psychological studies that track these transformations of the self-sense, that is, in this case, shifting from organizing around avoiding fear and threat to organizing around love and wholeness. These transitions take around anything from 2 to 10 years, depending on the individual.
Mm.
So there's a time factor, there's a transitional factor, there's a testing factor, you know, and they have very little to do with the outer circumstance, but rather with the capacity for the integrity of the self that is bound in love to be consistent in the face of whatever life is bringing to it, and the capacity to respond to the challenge with love. Not so much in the capacity to be an accumulator. Would be very nice if that would happen too, but I think the deeper response is the identity shift to the stabilization of the open heart and love in whatever life brings to you. And with that, there's a capacity to move through rather than to be hooked into all the egoic conditioning the world is throwing at you, and to keep moving forward true to your own path, whatever that path is.
Yeah. So I think what I appreciate about this text, what I appreciate about this voice and the reflection that it stirred in us, is the fact that it pushed the button to ask questions around authenticity. Are we authentic enough? Are we tuned into our source, the abundant source? Are we listening to that voice and listening well? And are we also expressing what we're hearing in terms of practical life application? So that I appreciate. The thing that is still disturbing, and that's why we're talking, because we're working through disturbances so that we can find the calm waters again, is the rising emergence of the feminine voice, getting increasingly frustrated with the masculine. And the classical words are, get off your ass and get off the couch and do something. Don't expect, and there are many, many of these lines. Many don't expect that sitting on your ass watching TV will bring in and feed the children. So do something. And I think that's a difficult task for the moment, because it then refocuses the purpose of masculine on a single purpose, and that is provide for your family, provide for your spouse, be the provider. It brings back to the singularity of what we're good for is being a provider, and that is not quite fair, because I think our life and the spectrum of the wheel of life expressions are equally complex than any other human being. So I don't know if you have any comments so far.
I think the unenlightened woman says, get off your ass, go get a fucking job. And there's anger in that. And that anger identity can be shared with the masculine too. Maybe the man is angry at himself for not being able to provide. He's saying, stop being a fucking loser, go and get a job, because it's scary what's happening, and you need to go and provide, and you need to go and be in control. And these voices can be very powerfully embodied, even unconscious, that they feel like the voice or the thoughts of the true self coming through. And so, you know, I feel that the awakened man has to have the capacity to investigate, is this true for him?
Yeah.
Does acting on this voice take him, you know, is he avoiding a fear and avoiding threat and avoiding anger to be compliant? Or is he in touch with a deeper trust in life that he knows what is true for himself and he can navigate through this time in a way that maintains his integrity? And but to do that, usually this man has to have trust in something greater and trust the unknown. And it's challenging when he's looking to preserve relationships that are based on trust in the known, not built on faith in the unknown. I think this is one of the challenges men come to, is how to navigate these territories, because it's difficult. It will activate all his own fears of abandonment, aloneness, lack of connection, lack of support, losing the family, losing the home, losing everything. And these are tough challenges to open one's heart to.
Totally. And I like what you're saying. I like what I'm hearing in a sense that there's also moments of honesty where the masculine can hear these voices, take it inside, reflect on them, and so to ask himself the self-reflection question: is this a reflection of what I'm feeling inside? Am I afraid? Am I scared? Am I blocking my own transcendence? In what ways do I keep the doors closed and then complain that the doors are not opening for me? So I think that's very, very important step. And again, to appreciate the feminine's voice in that sense is very extremely essential. The second aspect of that, of course, is that it also reflects our own feminine, our own creativity, our own anima, which we probably have not accessed completely enough or appropriately enough. It is an ongoing process. It's never accessible and voila, the job is done. It's a day-to-day process. But the question arises, have I connected to my own anima appropriately enough to give me access to that new transcendent discovery of how else I can express myself in this world and how else I can bring my gift forth into this world.
There are a couple of points on that, and just to connect to the second point first, the anima. I experience the anima as the expansive life force. And if the response from the feminine is shutting down that life force, what's coming from a perspective of a contracted life force that's angry and pushing, perhaps that's not true, because that's not the light. And what I've also found in my own experience is that being in a long-term relationship, often the woman will embody and express what I'm not seeing inside myself. And so my challenge as a man is to move beyond my ideal, my persona of acceptability. And to be honest, is this reflecting a part of me I might be projecting or not being seeing? And to find it inside myself, to feel it, to acknowledge it, to understand I'm intimately connected to my field around me. And is there a part of me that's me too, which I might be buying into? And so that honesty is really important. And once the honesty is in place, then perhaps the freedom of my anima that is radiant, that expands into life, that is like a spotlight shining light into the world. Not like actual light beams, but the sense of alive, confident radiance can start to emerge. And men often look for that radiance. They look for the woman, as the projection of their radiance. And the challenge is to find the radiance inside oneself, and the confidence inside oneself, and the trust inside oneself that we so often look for from the others around us.
Brilliant. So maybe in conclusion, a few minutes on are we as coaches following our bliss? Two, in analogy with the hero's journey, sometimes the hero, when he follows his bliss, he symbolically moves into battle. And in order to conquer the challenges, he needs to develop new skills.
Yeah.
Sometimes those skills are enforced in the sense that we lose the battle and we we go home with the tail between the legs, and we actually have to lick our wounds and become wounded, but then rise above our woundedness and develop a new level of that skill before we can encounter the battle again. Ultimately, we then go into battle and we conquer, and there's an elixir, there is a blissful result, to use the words of the script earlier on. There is a result, and this result can be taken back to the tribe, to the community, and shared with the new heroes, the upcoming heroes that also need to go into battle in life. But battle in a sense of an honest battle, a battle that carries integrity, a battle that has been faced, and a battle that we have learned certain skills from, that makes us proud, feeling worthy, even more worthy. And of course, all of these symbolic expressions are also very closely connected to the ultimate life journey, which is becoming one again with the Creator Self, to move back from fragmentation and fragmented self to whole self. So I think the question, do we as coaches actually live our bliss? And have we explored our skill making to the extent? Are we prepared for the new world to express our gift in this new world?
Yeah. And I think that there's, to live one's bliss almost implies that as coaches, are we willing to travel the hero's journey? And what I've experienced is that each time I access a potential or a part of my light that has been blocked or thwarted, and I can heal that, almost immediately I have a test in the outer world. A challenge arises that tests, do I contract back into the defenses, or can I live my light and stay true to myself through this challenge? So the notion of fighting the dragon or meeting the challenge, one has to have power. Following your bliss doesn't happen in perfect conditions on an island. It's the capacity to hold your light and be true to yourself in the midst of challenge. And slowly that capacity gets stronger and stronger and more developed and more capable. Then you can go back to your village, to your community with the gift. And your gift is the capacity to hold the light in the midst of fear, to keep the group together rather than the group disintegrating, and to hold the strength and love and confidence which might have been lost. So I think as coaches, are we doing that? Are we holding firm to that? And that's a really valid question to ask. How do we do that? So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those skills do have different layers, of course. On a superficial or outer level, I think it's about the capacity to express, to articulate, to ask the right questions, to work with less is more, to ask smaller questions, less complicated questions, but more powerful questions. Questions that will stir, that will invoke and evoke and will disturb, but all in good, loving faith to help the client to awake to his own blissful state and his own capacity to live life fully.
Yeah. That feels, just to add on that feels true, like the capacity to meet the client with love unconditionally, to transmit the love, and they can awaken to that love inside themselves. And I think compared to the message we discussed today, where one was met with judgment.
Yeah.
And my invitation to the writer of the WhatsApp would be to say, what if you could meet the moment with love?
Yeah.
How would that change
Exactly.
things?
Yeah. So we've discussed the outer skills, the way that we express it. I think inwardly, as a coach, we really need to hold our own. We have to hold those qualities of calmness, of like Course in Miracles talks about trust, that everything will be expressed in the perfect way for this present moment. To be open-minded, to be to don't bring rank into the conversation. As I'm the coach, I'm so skilled, but rather that we, coach and coachee, have an equality and an equal contribution to the process of exploration and discovery. So there's inner qualities and outer qualities, and maybe we can talk about the inner qualities that we need to hone as skills as coaches for this time that we are living in.
I think so, and it feels like the gift of coaching is a transmission of confidence, not a transmission of ideas or advice or solutions, but a transmission of the oneness of being with the Father, and transmitting that confidence into those who we are around and into everybody. It doesn't matter if we're coaching them or not, but to be transmitters of that and holders of that.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens is, whatever grace comes our way in the form of abundance, like physical abundance, that's a blessing. It's not a right. It's not from our own works or our own personal creations, even though the egoic self might feel that way sometimes, because it likes to take ownership of, it likes to wear the badges and pretend that it was the source. But the real source is greater, and if we're blessed, so be it. That's lovely.
So the summary sentence from my side would sound like, yes, I follow my bliss. I follow that which inspires me. I do my inner work. I hone my skills. I stay tuned to my own authentic self. I do things out of passion and love. I'm not motivated by fear. I say no to things that are not aligned with my true being. And I say yes to the things that I'm inspired to. And I make a point to enhance and elaborate, or expand rather, my knowledge about reality day to day.
That's beautiful. Yeah. My short summary is, I take ownership that I'm a transmitter of emotion and experience, and I want to choose to transmit love and wholeness and integrity. And I want to share the transmission of that confidence with the world around me, to let it freely move into spaces and people and events and circumstances. And I'm willing to stay open to my darkness and to heal it with loving, kind presence. And I'm willing to share my goodness as and when it arises, and to trust that whatever happens from that place will be the right thing.
So let's follow our bliss and share our gifts.
Sure. It was great. Thank you so much, Leon.
Thank you, Bruce.